I'm Andrew Biswell. I'm Professor of Modern Literature at Manchester Met, and my writer is the poet W.H. Auden. I fell in love with Auden when I was 18. I was working in a library, I just left school, and I read his poems, and I thought they were very strange and wonderful. I didn't understand everything I read, but I wanted to find out more. What I like about his writing is that he invents a language that resembles nobody else's. And my favourite Auden book, he wrote when he was about 20. The book is called Poems, published in 1930, and it's got 30 poems in it and a play, which is a very weird play. And I've gone back to that book of his more than any other, and I've never got to the bottom of it. It's wonderful, magical, and kind of seductive in all kinds of ways. So one of the things that I like about Auden is he's probably one of the most versatile of poets. He writes in all of the available forms, and then he runs out of forms, and he finds he's got to invent his own. So there's this stanza that doesn't have a name that he invented, which has alternating lines of 5 and 13 syllables. And he was always looking around. He was very curious about the modern world. So, for example, he read Marianne Moore, and he was bowled away by her poems, and he wanted to imitate her. And so he did for the next sort of 10 years and beyond. He was responding to what he read. So he's very connected to other people's poetry. Now, I think Auden is still relevant to readers now. And I think one of the reasons people should read him is because the problems he's addressing are the kinds of problems that we face in the world of today. He's very worried about nationalism. He lived in Germany just before Hitler came to power. So in that sense, his poems responding to the rise of the Nazis are very political. But he was very worried about populism. He was worried about all kinds of political and social and personal problems which haven't gone away. So I think any reader picking up his books today would find things that resonate with them. So as far as being a gay writer is concerned, well, I think he'd have rejected that label. And he talks about himself as a crook. It's one of the words he uses, crooked, and that word is there in the poems. And I suppose, in a way, that means bent or not straight. But it also implies criminality, and he's very aware that his sexuality in England at the time when he started to write was the wrong side of the law. And he was quite worried about that. And ultimately, I think that's why he lived so much abroad, and he ended up in America. Well, he ended up in Austria, but he'd been living in America for a long time. A lot of the poems are quite hard to read because you're never quite sure who he's speaking to. And a lot of his early love poems are addressed to this person who's just called you. So you never know, is that a man? Is it a woman? You just can't tell. And I think not giving himself away is quite important to what Auden thought he was doing as a poet. So in a sense, he was out and not out right from the start. And if you knew how to read the poems, you could see, who he was and how he felt. And if you didn't know, maybe you'd read them a different way. And I think that ambiguity is really important to his work and to the ways that we read and understand it. And I think that maps onto his life as well. What we know of his life is that mostly he formed relationships with men. There were some very close relationships with women. He married Erica Mann, who was the daughter of Thomas Mann. She was also a lesbian, and essentially he married her to give her a passport because she was being persecuted by the Nazis. So they never lived together. And he said that marriage was one of the things that a gay man could do to help somebody else, to, in this case, to give her a passport, to get her out of Nazi Germany. But, he formed relationships with many people, men and women, and he's also somebody who writes about what it's like just to be by yourself, to be jilted and abandoned and not always happy being that way. So I think Auden in his poems, he's lots of different people, lots of voices, and that's one of the things I've always enjoyed and really liked very much about reading him. It's part of the richness of reading him is that he's not just one consistent voice, he's lots of people.